At 70, when applause softens and the lights linger just a moment longer than before, Denzel Washington stands at a quiet crossroads that few ever see. The world knows the thunder of his voice, the authority in his gaze, the unshakable presence that once filled theaters like a force of nature. But behind that mastery lies a silence shaped by time, by faith tested in private, by expectations that never loosen their grip, by the invisible weight of becoming a symbol long before being allowed to simply be a man. Aging does not arrive loudly for legends. It enters softly, through reflection, through memory, through questions that cannot be answered by awards. What happens when the roles slow, when the mirror begins to ask harder truths than the crowd ever dared to? And what remains when a lifetime of strength finally permits vulnerability? This is not a story of scandal or spectacle. It is a meditation on endurance, belief, pressure, and the unseen cost of greatness. The quiet truth is not what he lost, but what he was forced to carry alone for decades. And the question lingers unresolved and haunting. When the curtain eventually falls, who will remember the man beneath the legend? At 70, the applause no longer crashes like thunder. It fades, gently, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than noise ever did. In the quiet corners of early mornings, before cameras and commitments reclaim the day, Denzel Washington sits alone with time itself. Light filters through drawn curtains, soft and pale, illuminating a face the world knows well, yet has never truly studied in stillness. Fame has given him everything except anonymity, and age has given him something rarer, distance from the roar. Publicly, he remains immovable, a symbol of authority and grace. Privately, reflection has become unavoidable. Each breath feels measured now, each step accompanied by memory. He has portrayed kings, soldiers, fathers, saviors, men certain of who they are. Yet the slow passage of time introduces questions no script ever prepared him for. What remains when the roles slow down? When admiration lingers but expectation quietly retreats? Psychologically, the conflict is subtle but relentless. He has spent decades being watched, studied, quoted. That constant gaze shaped him, hardened him, refined him. Aging loosens its grip, and in that loosening comes fear, not of obscurity but of honesty. In private moments of prayer, faith becomes less about certainty and more about surrender. The silence invites truths that applause never allowed space for. Scenes shift between empty theaters after premieres and quiet rooms far from the spotlight. The contrast is stark. Where crowds once demanded presence, stillness now demands reckoning. Every award shelf becomes a mirror, reflecting not achievement, but time past. He feels gratitude without triumph, pride without hunger. The man the world believes it knows feels increasingly distant from the man aging behind closed doors. There is no scandal here, no dramatic collapse. Only the slow weight of becoming a legacy while still alive. Being remembered before being finished carries its own burden. Each day whispers the same unspoken question. Has the world already decided who he is, leaving no room for who he is becoming? As night falls, the silence deepens. The applause is gone, but something unresolved remains, hovering just beneath the calm. The story does not ask what he achieved. It asks what it cost him, and whether the quiet ahead will finally demand the truth he has spent a lifetime holding back. Childhood arrives not as nostalgia, but as architecture. The rooms are small, the rules are large, and every sound carries instruction. In this modest world, strength is not inherited. It is assembled piece by piece. Young Denzel learns early that order is safety, that expectations arrive before affection, that discipline is love expressed without softness. Voices are measured. Silence is meaningful. Nothing is accidental. Responsibility settles on him before he understands its weight. He learns to sit still, to listen closely, to respond correctly. Mistakes do not invite comfort, they invite consequence. The fear of disappointing authority becomes a quiet companion, shaping posture and tone. Emotion is managed, not explored. Vulnerability feels exposed, and exposure feels dangerous. So he adapts, building an internal armor that will one day read as confidence. Faith enters his life early, not as escape, but as structure. God is present in rules, in expectations, in moral clarity that leaves little room for ambiguity. Belief offers guidance, but it also sharpens fear. To fall short is not merely to fail people, it is to fail something higher. Psychologically, this intertwining of faith and fear creates vigilance. He watches himself closely, learning restraint before freedom. In school and church halls, moments of talent flicker. His voice carries. His presence draws attention. Praise arrives, but it is precise, conditional, tethered to performance. Approval becomes something to earn repeatedly, never something to rest inside. Each success brings relief, not joy. Each achievement raises the bar rather than easing the climb. Isolation grows quietly alongside discipline. He is surrounded by structure, yet rarely held by softness. The inner child learns to be useful before being curious, composed before being honest. Excellence becomes a shield against disappointment, but also a barrier to ease. Even in moments of recognition, something remains unsatisfied. Foreshadowing lives here in the pattern taking shape. The pursuit of mastery begins not as ambition, but as protection. Strength promises safety. Control promises survival. Time moves forward, but these lessons remain embedded, guiding every choice long after childhood ends. The discipline that steadies him will later steady others. The fear that sharpens him will later exhaust him. For now, he cannot name any of this. He only knows how to endure, how to perform, how to stand straight under expectation. And somewhere beneath that composure, a softer self waits, unheard, wondering when it will be allowed to breathe without consequence or apology. The ascent is gradual at first, almost polite. One role leads to another, each slightly larger, each carrying a little more weight. Film sets replace classrooms, and cameras replace expectation-filled rooms of childhood. The world opens its doors with quiet confidence, as if recognizing something inevitable. Talent sharpens under pressure. Discipline translates seamlessly into performance. Soon, his presence on screen feels undeniable. Fame gathers momentum. Roles arrive that do more than entertain. They define eras, shape conversations, command reverence. Directors trust him with gravity. Audiences believe him instinctively. Award ceremonies blur into one another, bright lights washing over tailored suits, applause rising on cue. From the outside, this is triumph in its purest form. A man ascending exactly as destiny intended. But inside, something narrows. Emotionally, success does not soften the solitude he has carried since childhood. It magnifies it. Each achievement raises the stakes. Each public triumph adds another layer to the image he must now protect. He is no longer seen as simply an actor. He becomes a symbol of authority, of morality, of unshakable strength. Representation settles onto his shoulders without asking permission. Every role is watched closely. Every performance carries expectation beyond the script. Psychologically, restraint becomes constant. There is no room for impulsiveness, no margin for visible doubt. Weakness is not just personal, it feels communal. He carries the pressure of doing right not only by himself, but by family, by community, by an industry eager to place him on a pedestal. The higher he rises, the more carefully he must stand. On set, he is focused, controlled, exacting. Between takes, silence follows him like a shadow. Conversations remain polite, professional, distant. Admiration fills the room, but connection rarely does. Praise surrounds him, yet feels strangely hollow, arriving without intimacy. He is known everywhere, understood almost nowhere. Faith deepens during this ascent, but not gently. It becomes both refuge and responsibility. Prayer is no longer just gratitude, it is armor, a way to hold the weight without breaking. In quiet moments, faith steadies him. In darker ones, it demands endurance. The idea of failing morally, publicly, spiritually, feels catastrophic. So he tightens control, leans harder into discipline, calls exhaustion commitment. Foreshadowing reveals itself subtly. Fatigue hides behind professionalism. Loneliness disguises itself as focus. The summit approaches and the air grows thin. Awards accumulate, yet fulfillment remains elusive. Each standing ovation fades faster than the last. Hotel rooms feel emptier after the noise dies down. Silence waits patiently once the doors close. When the summit is finally reached, the view is breathtaking, but isolating. Applause echoes upward, carried by distance rather than closeness. Standing at the top, he realizes something unsettling. Success answered many questions, but not the ones that matter most. And as the world celebrates the height of his achievement, a heavier silence settles in its place, asking softly, insistently, if this is the summit, why does it feel so alone? At the height of recognition, the world's gaze sharpens instead of softening. Fame no longer feels like arrival, it feels like exposure. The rooms grow darker now, late nights after premieres, quiet hallways after applause, moments where reflection replaces adrenaline. In these spaces, the weight of being unbreakable settles heavily on Denzel Washington's shoulders, pressing inward with patient force. Publicly, the image is unwavering. He moves with control, speaks with authority, carries himself as someone immune to fracture. Privately, the vigilance never stops. Every word is measured before it leaves his mouth. Every choice is examined for consequence. Self-surveillance becomes instinctive, a second pulse beneath the first. The fear is not of failure alone, but of what failure would represent, to family, to community, to belief itself. Emotionally, exhaustion creeps in quietly. It disguises itself as discipline, as commitment, as professionalism. Rest feels indulgent. Vulnerability feels irresponsible. He has been entrusted with too much to appear uncertain. So doubts are folded inward, stored carefully where no one else can see them. Nights stretch longer. Sleep comes slower. The mind replays conversations, decisions, performances, searching for cracks before others can find them. Faith deepens here, but not gently. It is no longer sustained by confidence. It is driven by fear of collapse. Prayer becomes a private negotiation with endurance. He asks not for ease, but for strength to continue holding everything together. Belief steadies him, yet also tightens the standard he feels bound to meet. To stumble feels unthinkable. To fall feels unforgivable. Key moments arrive without ceremony. A role demands more than he can comfortably give. A responsibility stretches beyond what discipline can mask. In these moments, he feels the limits of control for the first time. The armor that once protected him begins to weigh more than its shields. Silence grows louder. The cost of being invulnerable becomes undeniable. Foreshadowing shadows every triumph. Each success requires greater restraint. Each victory narrows the margin for error. He senses that endurance, no matter how practiced, has boundaries. Legends are celebrated for their strength, but rarely allowed rest. The expectation to remain solid becomes its own kind of fracture, spreading slowly beneath the surface. The pressure reshapes time itself. Days blur into obligation, nights into vigilance, weeks into seasons marked by responsibility rather than rest. Even moments meant for celebration carry an undertow of caution, as if joy must be moderated to remain acceptable. He notices how laughter arrives briefly and leaves quickly, replaced by composure. The mirror reflects certainty, but behind the eyes lives calculation. He listens more than he speaks, measures reactions, guards emotion with practiced ease. The body endures what the mind commands, yet signals fatigue in subtle ways: tight shoulders, heavier breaths, pauses that linger a second too long. Still, he moves forward, guided by habit and belief, trusting discipline to outrun consequence. Somewhere within this controlled momentum, a warning whispers softly. It asks not for retreat, only acknowledgement. But acknowledgement requires stillness, and stillness feels dangerous. So he keeps going, balanced at the edge, uncertain whether the strength that carried him here will also carry him through what waits beyond. The precipice remains, patient, unresolved, watching, waiting. The present arrives without ceremony. No spotlight announces it, no crowd confirms its importance. It settles in quietly, in the slowed rhythm of mornings and the softened edges of ambition. At this stage of life, time no longer feels like something to outrun. It feels like something to finally acknowledge. Aging reframes everything it touches. Success loses its sharpness, failure its sting, belief its fear. What remains is clarity, earned rather than assumed. The setting is intimate now. Fewer rooms, fewer voices, fewer demands. Silence is no longer an adversary, it is a companion. In reflection, Denzel Washington no longer measures life by momentum, but by meaning. The drive that once propelled him forward loosens its grip, replaced by an understanding that not everything must be proven, defended, or perfected. Emotionally, this is not surrender, it is relief. Peace arrives slowly, through confrontation with the self he once kept hidden behind discipline. Psychologically, control begins to release. The vigilance that governed every decision softens. He no longer scans each moment for consequence. Instead, he allows moments to exist without correction. Legacy, once defined by excellence and endurance, is quietly reimagined. It is no longer about being unbreakable. It is about being honest. Integrity replaces invincibility. Presence replaces performance. Key events are internal and profound. There is reconciliation with time, not regret for what passed, but gratitude for having endured it. Memories surface without urgency, without defense. Achievements are acknowledged without attachment. Failures are remembered without shame. Faith remains central but transformed. It is no longer fueled by fear of falling short. It is grounded in trust. Belief becomes rest rather than responsibility. The applause still exists somewhere, but it no longer dictates direction. He understands now that noise fades, but impact lingers quietly, carried in unseen ways. Conversations remembered. Lessons absorbed. Strength witnessed, not announced. The desire to be understood by everyone dissolves. What matters is being at peace with himself. Foreshadowing points toward an ending that resists spectacle. There is no grand farewell, no final bow demanding attention. The story does not close with triumph or tragedy, but with continuity. Legacy is not a moment. It is a resonance. It lives in memory, in influence, in the lives quietly shaped along the way. As the chapter draws to a close, one question remains suspended in the calm. Will the world ever understand the quiet truth behind the strength it celebrated? Or will the legend always speak louder than the man who carried it? The answer does not arrive. It does not need to. The silence holds it gently, unfinished, enduring, just like legacy itself.